Well, here we have the guest speaker, Marc Godsey from Vivint. If you can introduce yourself, your responsibilities, educational background, and so on.
Sure. Like you said, my name is Marc Godsey. I am a senior technology manager. I am responsible for the desktop and help desk functions here at Vivint. I have a degree from the University of Washington in psychology, which you wouldn't think translates to information technology, but it really does, actually, I found over the years. So I've been working in technology. We're looking at 20, almost 25 years now, with various capacities, and now running the all of the support at Vivint.
What are the upsides and downsides of being in a managerial position in IT?
Well, I tell you, first and foremost, I miss doing the troubleshooting. I'm a big hardware guy, so I love getting my hands on hardware and finding out and troubleshooting problems. And there's just not enough time in the day to do that for the most part. It's one of those interesting things when you talk about a career in information technology, when you get into management, is you spend all this time becoming proficient in IT troubleshooting, becoming like the subject matter experts, becoming the leads, and then all of a sudden that's kind of stripped from you because now you have management responsibilities that you have to attend to. So that's probably the hardest thing for me, is stepping back and away and realizing that I have to let the team do their job function and I have to do mine in order for everything to be cohesive and fluid.
Do you have a few war stories, kind of like tough situations in your whole time?
Absolutely. There's always tough situations, sometimes working 24 hours straight because you have a deployment. So we went from Windows, I'm pretty sure it was Windows XP to Windows 7, but it could be Windows 7 to Windows 10. It all blurs together sometimes, but where you have a mass amount of deployments to do, and you start running into issues that prevent you from hitting your timeline. So one of the big ones that we had, where we went into a site that wasn't our home site. It was actually here in Salt Lake. I'm originally from Seattle, so I was flown out here to Salt Lake for the bank, and we had I don't know, 30 machines to do a night, something like that. It all had to be after hours, and they all had to be done. And we had 3 days in which to do it. So we're looking at, I think we had a total of 120 machines, and each image takes about an hour and a half to drop with all the apps and everything else that had to be on there. And one of the complications we ran into is we ran out of DHCP addresses.
Oh no.
We didn't know because it wasn't our site. We didn't know that they had set a limit on their IP address ranges, and so all of a sudden I'm imaging 8 computers at a time, and all of a sudden none of them join. We're like, wait, what's going on here? And so it's after hours. It's probably midnight, 2:00 in the morning when this happens. And we're just scrambling. We're like, what's going on? What's happening? You can't reach out to anybody at that time, but we're under a deadline. And it dawned on us that, hey, I wonder what's going on here. So we grabbed a whole bunch of those old PCs and released them. And all of a sudden we were getting, we were outside the range. So that was one of the challenges that we had. And it probably took about a good 2-3 hours to figure out what the root cause was in order to rectify it.
Did you guys end up reaching out to networking, the people that was in charge of networking in that site or something like that?
We did end up calling them, but they said, hey, we have to limit they had a reason why the DHCP range was limited, but that was never conveyed to us when we were doing the project and having them involved and everything else. So I guess they just assumed that part of our process was to release the IP from the old computer, which it then became part of the process. No matter where we went, we then wrote that into the documentation. We said, release the IP and then move on. And then you can shut it down and deploy the new PC.
Nice. a question for you. What's your opinion on, I mean, education versus certifications?
I think a good mixture of both. Honestly, I think that it's a really good experience, to go to school, to have that type of background. Although when it comes to information technology, I also don't think it's absolutely requisite. Once you get into higher levels, they are going to be looking for a degree. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a degree in information technology. My degree is in psychology, but I do have certifications as well. The biggest thing is time on the is work experience. I used to report to a manager who didn't have a degree, and he's done okay for himself. But he's got some certifications. I think he did his CCNA at one point. He was MCSE 2000 certified, that sort of thing. So that was weighted heavily at that stage in his career, but now he's at a point where senior manager positions are eluding him because he doesn't have a degree. So there is value in both.
Okay. Well, I can see that, like a little mixture of both. When you say high positions, you mean like managerial positions or high technical positions?
I was saying the higher manager level positions.
Okay,
When you
okay,
get,
no problem.
if you're talking just technology positions and you're moving up and that's your track that you're going on, I would lean more towards the certifications and work experience, because there's no degree out there that's going to specifically address your job functions, 100%. But it's good to have that. But if you want to get into a career track where there is management, there is some of those things, then a degree is important.
What lessons have you learned so far in your career path until up to today?
Wow. I don't know if you can cram that into just a few minutes, but I think that one of the most important things is to have fun with what you do. I saw a sign that said, if you, how's it go? If you do the things you need to do when you need to do them, eventually you'll be able to do the things you want to do when you want to do them. And I think that there's some truth in that, but I also think that it's always a really good feeling to get up and be like, hey, I get to go to work, I get to do something, I get to contribute today, rather than the opposite of, and I've had these jobs where it's like, oh man, can I call in sick today? Do I have enough sick time? Do I have enough PTO? Do I have to go in today? Those jobs, they just drain you. So making the job, it's still work, but you can still have fun in the job. So making and challenging yourself. If you have a mundane, monotonous type situation, for me personally, that's hard that's hard for me to get through a day. And one of the things I try to convey to my kids that they just don't understand is that I would much rather work a 12-hour day being busy than 8 hours a day with nothing to do. Yeah. For me, being engaged and having something to do, that it just goes by so much faster and it's so much more satisfying.
Interesting. And finally, the final questions. Any recommendations you would offer to students that would help them to be successful in their careers?
Find what you're passionate about. Information technology wasn't something that I sought out at first. My original career path was to be a physical therapist, but I got back from 2 years, in a foreign country after high school, and I'd never heard of the internet. I've played on, like Oregon Trail, and I did some coding class in 8th grade. That's where you basically code the cursor to move from the top to the bottom of the screen or whatever, but there was no operating system. I'm that old. There was Windows 3.1, but there wasn't like this GUI operating system in existence at the time. So I get back in, must have been 95, 96 timeframe. and all of a sudden you got Windows 95 is out, so, and I just started messing around and playing with things, and I was like, hey, I kind of have an affinity for this. I built my first computer, bought all the parts, built it, just found that I really enjoyed it. So finding something that you're passionate about, that you like, is going to make your career so much more enjoyable. And sometimes you have to work towards that. So maybe you're in a job where you're not quite passionate about it, but it's a stepping stone to get you there. So you take those stepping stones to get where you want to go. And that way, and it's always, I always like the analogy that happiness isn't a destination, it's a mode of travel. So just make sure that you're doing what makes you happy as you're traveling along, that realizing that it's not a destination, it's how you do it every step along the way.
That's awesome. Well, that's all my questions. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate your time.
Hey, no worries. Happy to help.